We're heading out to Las Vegas, a lot of conversation. The industry, the NAB is pulling together this digital summit, this council almost. What are the issues you think that need to be accomplished in terms of unifying the industry around standards? What's on your wish list?
Well, I think that is it. You nailed it on the head. It's really about getting together so that we can create standards around measurement and data. Obviously, there's been an explosion of data available in the last couple of years, but what hasn't really happened is a standard method of viewing the data and articulating the data in a common way, and that's really what the focus of the group is to start the work in establishing standards around these new forms of data.
So what kind of, give me an idea of sort of maybe drilling down sort of to subsections. Does it mean, you know, the cross screen? Does it mean the linear TV everywhere stuff that has to be measured? Is it addressable? Is it everything? What are sort of the pockets that need to be worked on?
It's a great point. I think the first step is really to fill in the holes of measurement. You know, what we've seen since we onboarded census-level audience data, something we call total audience data 3 years ago, is that sample-based methods, which have been used to measure television viewing, aren't sufficient enough in measuring viewing across the dial. You know, we talk a lot about cross-platform viewership and the fragmentation of these new devices. There's no doubt that digital has really picked up in terms of the consumption, but what we have overlooked is the fact that viewing has spread across the dial. So while sample-based methods might be sufficient in measuring the top 50 networks, we have several hundred channels on our dial. So when you get to networks 50 and above, typically that's where the sample breaks down. So what that translates to is a lot of viewing that just isn't measured. So I think the first step in terms of solving the measurement issue is to get more complete and comprehensive measurement on television, since that historically has been measured by a panel, and then clearly being able to extend that across platforms. So regardless of what device consumers using to consume pay TV content, broadcast content, the fact is that we've got it measured in a unified way. What we've found since we launched total audience data is, one, just getting much more granular visibility into ratings and viewership. So rather than just age and gender based demos, obviously going across the board and including a client's own data. You know, one of the more interesting aspects of addressable is the ability for a client to use their own list, their own customer list, their own loyalty card member list or prospect list, and then match that up against the audience data so they can view ratings based on things that are much more relevant to them. I think in the beginning part of addressable, that was one of the really more profound benefits, was just being able to look at ratings at a household level based on much more granular audience attributes. And then I think on the back end, it has a lot to do with taking the ad exposure data and measuring response. So whether it was looking at the effect that the television ad campaign had on traffic to the website, open rates on email, or actually sales, being able to use data in that kind of a versatile way is really where we saw the demand.
And this doesn't exist in the industry, sort of like the IAB has standards for digital publishers. There's no real standards, or
there are and there aren't. I mean, obviously we talk about, you know, viewership and impressions. So yes, there are metrics that define whether it's looking at ratings or whether it's looking at ad delivery. There are metrics that define it. What hasn't been standardized is what would qualify viewership. In other words, would channel tuning through the dial constitute viewership? I don't think anyone would agree that it would. So how long should that viewer stay on a particular network before it constitutes a view? I think that's a good example of kind of a viewership or rating standard. And then in terms of the impression metrics, you know, the one beauty of television is that, you know, there is no ad fraud. So the set-top box data that we're delivering is a true reflection of what is actually being tuned to. So our ability to measure impressions, not only in terms of number of impressions, but impression duration is another metric I think that's really important for television, because the duration is a great measure of engagement. And I think television drives engagement better than any platform out there. And that's really a focus for us.